Did it get corona too?
Yeah, right.
It's safe to make movies again. Corona, corona, corona.
Seriously.
It's like, god damn, guys. Can we please not do this? No? Cool, all right. Bammo. All right. Now I can see stuff and my friends at the same time.
Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, motherfucker.
Yeah. Well, might as well just get started.
All right.
Don't have a
Jump
clever
in,
way to...
dick first, you know what I'm saying?
Speaking of dick first, comes naturally, we are...
Joe.
Mike.
I am Cody, and today we are joined by...
I don't want to.
Tosh. It's Tosh. It's Tosh.
I don't want to.
Dick first.
I don't want to.
I mean, we didn't mean to bring up your high school nickname, but, whatever.
Well, you're making me relive memories that I'm not ready for.
Yeah, well, that's what therapy's good for.
This is therapy?
Forced therapy?
Yeah, it's a thing.
It's not a thing.
This is way cheaper than the shit I was going to.
And Mike, it might not help at all. There you go.
Yeah.
I was going to say, completely not
like
successful.
It's not making a lot of progress. I've been doing this for a while. I feel about it's much better.
First off, all
really
help
pay for
begins
it.
with yourself.
Did you read that in a fortune cookie?
No, that's an actual term from psychology.
You went
Tony Robbins.
You have things today?
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
Do they have fortune cookies there?
Tony Robbins. Cody Robbins. Sorry.
Cody Robbins. All right. So before we get into obviously what we're going to talk about is
What are we
Tenet
going to talk
today.
about?
We're going to talk about Tenet, the movie that we all saw in a theater together, which was insane.
Holy shit. Did we die? Did we get the Rona?
Well, I mean, not yet, but
early to tell.
We still got a few days before any symptoms show up. But
All right.
before we talk about the movie itself, what did you guys think of your first return to a post-pandemic or pre or during pandemic movie theater?
Well, I didn't die.
Not
So
yet.
it was good.
But what do you think of the environment, like the situation and the being there?
It felt like pretty much everywhere else, at least initially walking into the place, it felt like everywhere else that I have been, which has literally only been my work and Fry's and Target. They put up the spit guards around pretty much all the employees, which is nice. Everything seemed clean, but I guess didn't seem cleaner than what it used to be. I know at least the men's bathroom, they had the every other urinal blocked off, which is weird. We don't even do that at work.
Prudes.
As far as then getting into the theater, like you sit down and then you're just in the theater after like a half an hour or so of sitting in the chair. It was just like that was it. You're just watching a movie like you always have. And then by the end of the experience, everybody put their mask back on and walked out the door. So really, it doesn't feel that much different. Does it feel safer? Not really, particularly, but it doesn't feel that much different to me.
Michael,
Was
what
it
are your
supposed to
thoughts?
make you feel safer, or was it supposed to make us, less likely to get the Rona?
Both.
I never felt safe in a theater.
I never feel safe in a theater, exactly. That's what I'm saying. You're supposed to feel safer. Well, and I say that because theaters are obviously known places to get like bed bugs and stuff like that. So I don't feel safer because of it. There was no sense of heightened cleaning, essentially, but it felt like a theater.
Well, all the seats are wiped down now too, like disinfectantly wiped down. Between
Definitely. I'm sure they are. It's just that there's no seeing people. Like even when we left the theater, when in the past you used to have people standing out front with trash cans.
Well, to be fair, on that point, that was the last showing in that auditorium.
Right, I did forget about
and
that.
that's standard practicing because the actual cleaning crew comes in after the last showings.
It's true. I forgot about that. So it could have been a little skewed because that was literally the last.
I was talking to a couple of friends who still work at Harkins, a couple of managers that still work there, just to see like what they put in place and what they're doing. And obviously all the guards and dividers and everything is a big thing. You have the loyalty cups. They just give you a different cup now if you show a loyalty cup because they're not taking any items from a customer behind the register lines, which is a good move. They're not doing refills on anything.
Yeah, not doing refills. I saw, or it's credit only, no cash.
Yeah. And they did say that because it's, well, at least for right now, because it's less showings of everything. And obviously, I think they mapped out the seating. It felt good, like going in there. You know what I mean? Like I actually enjoy the fact that nobody's sitting next to me so much.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Like even like post COVID, like we have a fucking shot and it's all gone and we're good. Like I kind of
you're like, I'd like this
forever.
Yeah, exactly, right.
But that's just the antisocial person in me. But they also said they have Harkins has always been pretty good with cleaning routines. They've always kind of, I mean, you could feel it going into a good Harkins as opposed to like an AMC or like one of those like non-nationwide ones. You know what I mean? Like it always just felt better.
Yeah,
in there.
Definitely.
So they've always been pretty stringent, but even now, so they implemented more of like for concession stands, the employees are only to be having they've always had a disinfected wipe next to a washcloth with disinfectant that they wipe down the area. That's always been a rule for them. But it used to be like you get it changed out as needed. Now they're doing it, and it's not necessarily on the hour every hour. Sometimes it's a little bit before, but they have their rushes mapped out for when, you know, certain movies go in. So now they have a new guideline of when, all right, this movie starts. We have so long before this movie starts. Everything gets swapped out now. So there's new things going into place there. And then the other big thing was the fact that they have disinfecting wipes on all the seats now. So that's another reason why there's less show times, is because now they're taking 30 minutes of cleaning when it used to be you get in there, you sweep up, you get all the trash out of there as quick as you can, get the fuck out. Now they have like 30 minutes in between showings to make sure everything gets swept out. All the handrails in the auditorium get wiped down. All the seats get wiped down. Even the seats that aren't mapped to be seated in. Everything like that gets wiped down with disinfectant now too. So like they are putting in, but like you said, I felt better obviously, but it feels like about the same as like having to go to the store or not having, but like if you do go to a restaurant, like a restaurant that's doing it properly, it's like, yeah, they're doing things and it's better than like not doing anything, but it's also like we are still in here eating. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's always kind of in the back of your head. But it's a weird thing because it's like, especially for me, because I worked at a Harkins for a long time, and I still have a handful of friends that work there. And it's like, not only do I love movies, and like going to the movies once a week was a pretty regular thing, sometimes more. But also I have friends who, like, if the movies aren't open, they don't get a paycheck whatsoever. And you know what I mean? And it's like you trying to balance the whole, you know, be safe, you know, flatten the curve thing with like, well, my friends still got to eat. You know what I mean? Like if a theater's not open, like through no fault of their own, they just lose a job and it feels shitty. So you try to do things. That's why I try to go to like the local restaurants that I like once a week, you know, like I like going to, I'll go to Raul and Teresa's usually on like my cheat day. It's a nice, good mom and pop place. They're doing the right thing, but like even restaurants at like 30% capacity, like restaurants are operating on such a thin margin as it is. Like I feel bad, just going away completely from them. It's weird. It's like calculated risks at this point. It's like I really want to go and do something and support a local business and have a good time as safely as possible, but it is still kind of just dangerous being out in public. So
yeah.
But I think they did it. I'm so far, like I can't see anything that they realistically could do to do better. Like I feel like they did a good job with everything. I feel like the things they put in place were the right things, and I hope it works out, and I hope we keep doing good and are able to be more comfortable going to the theater again shortly.
Most definitely.
Cool. All right. So.
Okay.
I just wanted to get you guys' idea, like what you thought of going back.
What did you think?
Well, what did you think? Yeah.
I mean, I the reason I haven't said anything is I feel the same way. It feels like if you've gone out to anywhere recently, to restaurants, to grocery stores, or whatever, it feels like the same environment. The biggest thing to me is the one thing I noticed, and it could be because obviously we were the last showing of that night, but also to what Joe was saying is when you leave the theater, there's usually people there with the trash can waiting for you, and this time there's like you had no associates near you. There was no one around,
right?
Which I thought was interesting.
That out too, and to Mike's point about it being the last show of the night, and that probably was it too. Like at least in the past with Harkins, there was always somebody cleaning off the little butter stands, and there's always somebody vacuuming where those little push vac things are that don't actually suction stuff up. Was always somebody there, but thinking about it, I can't remember seeing any other employee that wasn't a ticket taker or working the ticket booth or taking tickets or working the concession stand. Like there was no one else. It felt like.
Well, yeah, but that's also part of the plan too, is not have people in the lobby unnecessarily.
Oh, understandable.
So they're a little bit more strategic. Yeah, it is very weird because you usually see 4 or 5 people wiping stuff down but I think it's just more they have certain times now blocked out where they know it's going to be less busy in there to try to get as much of it done as they can.
And exactly to your point, like they could have been, one of your big movies is about to start, so you're waiting for all the people to finish getting their popcorn, getting their snacks, getting their extra butter and whatever on the side thing, and then they go into the theater. Once that starts, then you can clean up after people. It's the idea that you're not seeing it, so it's out of sight, out of mind. It's not, to you, it's not necessarily happening, even though it is. That's all I'm saying.
To me, it felt like going into any AMC where, like, you have 3 people running the whole theater.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't see... Because, to what you said, like, when you go to Harkins normally, you see people cleaning all the time. You see the people over-cleaning and sweeping up near the... condiment stuff where the napkins and the straws are, and the normal where you pump your own imitation butter, that sort of thing.
Real butter.
And it's obviously that's taped off and you can't use it, and the little shakers of gross seasoning stuff is all gone. And so you have a lot of that.
But that's because I don't use that stuff.
Yeah, because it's gross and that's for dumb people. But yeah, you didn't see that, but I mean, to me, it felt like what your experience at an AMC normally is. And you go in and there's very little staff, but
the only difference is at no point at an AMC is it ever cleaned.
Well, yes, the difference is I could tell that people clean this place versus an AMC where they're standing shit in toilets all the time.
Oh God,
I will say, being that I work at a grocery store, I'm more watching the people, the clientele when I go out, because at a grocery store, they're fucking animals. They're all savages and they don't give a fuck and they're idiots.
Yeah.
And but at most or the couple restaurants that I do feel comfortable going to, and the Harkins experience, I'm like, all right, well, everyone's kind of listening to the rules. You know what I mean? Like they're not crowding you. They're not coming up on you in line. They're not, any of that shit. So that was nice because like it's so much worse at a grocery store, dude. Like,
Yeah.
You
I try
can't
to
get
avoid going in there. As much as possible.
Vultures.
Yeah, dude, they're fucking. Ugh, they're terrible.
Yeah.
Man.
And people
Visit
are
your local
bad
Kroger.
at our stores too.
Yeah, they're the worst people in the world. But on a brighter note, let's talk about the movie, fellas. Christopher Nolan's
right.
Tenet. Let's give
Awful.
this a. You shut your whore mouth, Taj. Before you get booted out of this phone call. We'll do our normal thing. We'll go around. Well, I'd say normally go around the table, but we're all at different tables. We'll go around the video chat here. We'll start with Taj because he's our guest. Sort of.
That's very kind of you.
So we're gonna do our normal. So 3 things you liked, 1 thing you were surprised by, and if you liked or disliked the movie.
So, gosh, it's tough because we talked about everything last night.
Yeah,
because
but
we couldn't
we weren't
help
recording
ourselves.
last night.
What's that?
But we weren't recording last night.
It's also true. I really, really enjoyed struggling to follow exactly like the little nuances of the story. I enjoyed it because the entire movie made me think a lot more than I'm accustomed to thinking through a movie, and it wasn't very predictable, which to me is an element of good writing. So the fact that I was really in, I had to pay attention. I had to play really close attention because there were so many little things and big things and little story keys. And I don't know if it was intended that way, but there were some parts where it was kind of hard to understand exactly what they were saying. And so that made me have to work a little harder to follow the storyline, but I was still able to, and it was a fantastic story. And it was amazing cinematography. We talked about that, you and I, Cody. It was just shot so well, and things that you wouldn't even begin to imagine could be possible were made possible in this movie, without giving away much. Those things I liked a lot. I liked that. I like that the characters weren't all these gigantic names. Weren't all gigantic names, and then they held everything together very well. I am a huge Kenneth Branagh fan, and so as an antagonist, he really made me happy. So those are things that I really enjoyed. And then what was the other thing that I
1 thing you were surprised by?
Surprised by? Everything visually, the entire movie visually surprised me because there were so many things that I couldn't conceptually even imagine that they could do on camera that they did well, really, really well, and that was a pleasant surprise. Kind of like, it's similar to, but not exactly the same as like when Avatar came out, and you're like, well, shit, I didn't, you didn't think about, some of the things that James Cameron did to kind of change movie making then. Really done in Tenet 1,000 times, more because technology has come so much further since then. And, I like visual things. I'm a very visual person. I imagine a lot and daydream and all those things. And so being able to see, all these cool things come to life was just really amazing. And I'll leave it at that.
All right. Michael.
Actually, I want to go last on this one, so can you jump ahead?
Nope.
No, fuck you. You're up.
Trust me, I want to go last.
Okay.
All right, Mike's going last.
Joseph.
I guess that jumps me to the next. So the first thing that I really liked about this movie was the lack or seemingly lack of use of CG in here. Everything was basically practical effects, at least looking. There were some scenes that, or some little tidbits here and there that you can obviously see that were more than likely CG if they weren't practical. And that's things just like there's one scene where Robert Pattinson is running his hand. It's towards that battle scene at the end where he's running his hand over a wall. You can see the rocks coming up from it because he's actually going backwards in time, really. So little things like that were absolutely fun to watch. Or the lack of the CG, the feeling of CG in the movie, even down to the car wrecks and everything, were really awesome to see. That you're just using more practical effects than anything. The cinematography, the audio design, like lumping all those things together to do a movie like this where you're traveling through time in different ways, and you're like it's hard to talk about. I literally had this. My mom asked me as she called today, and she was like, what have you done the last couple of days? And I went and saw a movie TENET, and she was like, oh, what's it about? And I'm like,
how do you even begin?
I can't describe this movie to you. And it's not a spoiler thing. It's just literally, how do you describe a movie that is moving forward but also backwards at the same time? Yes, Cody.
Call me.
Don't call him Cody.
Please?
Cody. Yes.
A secret agent who must manipulate the flow of time in order to prevent World War III. Boom. There you go.
I guess broad stroke wise, that's very much so.
That's what it's
all
about.
Cody deals with. Is
broad strokes.
It's just broad
True.
strokes.
No,
yeah.
broad's strokes.
Oh,
It's all the
sorry.
same, right? It's not the
I
same.
get confused.
That's all right. Go
Easy to
ahead.
do.
Go ahead, Joe.
But those scenes where you're there was an interrogation scene towards the end where you have the bad guy who's in the inverse side, and so every time he's talking to the people that are on the non-inverted side, everything's coming through backwards, and so they have to translate it to go forwards, and it from an audio aspect, from just a pure fact that somebody has to sit there and cut this together, scenes that are very much so the same because they're played at one point forward, and then you get to see the reverse side of them, to keep track of all this stuff and cut them perfectly and do it so well with the audio and everything. It must have been insane. So watching the final product, it's absolutely amazing. I know Cody and I afterwards said that this movie has to win all the awards, right? All of them.
Technically,
Because
yeah. The
technically,
technical
like,
awards, for sure.
Yeah, exactly, because it's so amazingly done.
They handled time manipulation so well that it almost made it reasonable
Yeah.
in today's world.
The third thing I liked, obviously, is the story. I went into it knowing I got a little bit of a spoiler of it, that it just involved time travel. And that was it. And to find out how they implemented the time travel is so unique, where it's literally objects that are somehow inverted in time or have a reverse entropy, as they call it, and how that is allowed to interact with our world that has regular entropy was absolutely amazing to see and really cool. I'd be interested to see how they filmed most of this movie, whether it was doing the thing where they would film it going forward, but then just play it backwards to show the reverse entropy part, like he's throwing the bullet around the table. Obviously, you could film that going forward and then just play it backwards, and that's the reverse entropy part of the thing. So it'd be interesting to see how much of the movie that was filmed like that. The thing that I was really surprised about, honestly, I don't know if there was really anything surprising about this movie to me.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I can't think of really anything surprising. Like, following the plot along, there were definitely points where I was able to, quote unquote, predict what was going to happen. Obviously, I didn't really predict to myself what the end was, in they're putting the MacGuffin thing together in order to basically undo the whole entire world or universe or whatever it was. But even down to just points where it's well narrated enough where you're like the point in the airport where you see the two masked guys come out of that machine and they get into fight with Pattinson and I forgot the other actor's name, the protagonist. Immediately I was like, oh, that has to be like the future version of Pattinson and the protagonist. It obviously only ended up being one of them, but the narrative was there enough to understand that it had to be that it was them and it wasn't somebody else. So that's me.
Boom.
Cody?
I enjoyed it tremendously. I thought the movie was unbelievable in every aspect. The story itself was, it's seems like a pretty basic, almost James Bond kind of idea. Guy who doesn't like anything, wants to destroy the world. And having that sentence I read earlier, which is a quote from Christopher Nolan himself, of what the movie is the easiest way to explain it, but also you're not telling anybody anything about the movie, because the whole thing about the plot to start World War III really has nothing to do with it, because it's beyond what you would think normally. Like World War III, yeah, they're trying to take over and be the superpower, and they're trying to do whatever, right? That's why they kept bringing up in the movie, like, is it a nuclear bomb? Is it, what is it? And they're like, no, it's a little bit different, and it's like it's a lot different than what you get in there. So I like that a lot. I just thought that it was not a new premise. There's always been movies about World War III and starting these massive wars and running of power and things like that. So that wasn't what I thought it was, which is cool, because like we tried to do with this movie is we all try to avoid as much about it as possible. I think the one time we all collectively experienced something was when we saw the very first teaser trailer in a movie like a year ago.
Yeah, that didn't give a shit. So
yeah. So I mean, and that's the cool thing about it is all you saw was like ships going forward and backwards, and like him touching the bullet hole, and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this? And I was pleasantly surprised by it. The things I liked, like I normally say on these, is I really dug the visuals, the audio, just not just design, but just the audio, the use of audio, and how like it literally, like the audio transitioned seamlessly from switching from scene to scene. And I'll bring up the last battle, for the device itself, the algorithm, which you realize it's in the future, but also part of it is in the past. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But like when they transition from like this full on like battle and war with these soldiers going back and forth, literally, and the music is super intense and it has these beats going on, and then it switches to the boat scene with her, and the audio doesn't just cut; it literally fades into a different song and a different score, and then goes all peaceful and calming and all this stuff, and then boom, ramps right back up into the fucking just hectic war. And I was like, this is beyond incredible, because not only do you have editing of video and of speech and audio and sound effects, but then the music is literally continuous. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty amazing thing to do. And the last one would be just the I thought everybody did an extremely good job of acting in it, because I think Joe even said it last night when we were driving home, is like, can you imagine trying to read this fucking script?
Right.
Like, it would make, they would have to have all this like jarbled nonsense going on and all this like what's happening in the scene, because there's so little dialogue in certain parts of it that's just showing you certain things, that it would have to just be like blocks of words, you know what I mean, like descriptions. This car's driving backwards, and you're like, okay. and this car's crashing, but in reverse, and you're like, "Fuck, did you just say? What does that mean? What is it? How does a car crash in reverse?" That sort of stuff. It's just like, I was like, wow, it must, is incredible to watch. As Taj said, is like being a visual person. I love movies, and watching just someone's imagination explode in front of you in the greatest way possible. I was like, okay, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to see. And the last thing, what I was surprised by, the complexity of this movie. Like, he's done some things in of his other movies, Interstellar, Prestige, where there's this big idea that the whole movie focuses on. But this is the first time where the entire movie is trying to explain, but also subjugate what you're hearing and what you think you're being told. Because Pattinson's character, as Joe and I were discussing last night, I think is the son.
Yeah.
I think he's the lady's kid. I think it's Max. And he's going by a different name, and I have reasons for it, and we can discuss it later if we have time. But just that in its own right is literally the most mind-numbing thing ever, because, like, I think he's dead, because there's that part where he saves them, air quotes, and he gets shot in the face.
I didn't even think that was a think part. I thought that was like a pretty, like, yeah, he's dead.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just thinking, like, the whole, like, that was blatant, obviously, but, like, it's like he's like saying, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to throw myself back in another layer of this. And I'm like, are you going to try to save yourself? Because I'm pretty sure you took a bullet to the brain. But whatever. Right. Anyways, that's mine. Mike, what do you got?
All right. I like this movie.
Good. I was worried.
And I'll say, and done. No, I will say this, though. I kind of, in general, I don't like time travel movies that much. Especially ones that try to take themselves seriously. Like the comedy ones are fun, you know what I mean? Like Terminator 2 obviously has some time travel aspects, and that's my all-time favorite movie. So, but it surprised me that this was a time travel movie, because Nolan's done this twice before in different aspects, and this feels like the accumulation of him, what he wanted to do but couldn't pull off before. Like, I feel like there's a lot of aspects of his other movies, and this is the one where he's like, oh, I can actually just take all these movies and make one movie with it. So, like we were talking about, from a technical standpoint, it's like, it's unrivaled. Like, you can't fuck with it. Like, that's a Nolan movie. You know, a Nolan movie is, there's going to be a few certain things. One, you have to watch it in theaters because you need proper sound, because you need to hear everything that's going on, because that's just as much of a character in his movies as anybody actually on the screen. You know, you're going to see some shit visually that you're not expecting to see. And oddly enough, you know, like, at the base level of it, the story's gonna be pretty simple. Like, the base story is a pretty simple premise, and Nolan, that I don't even want that to sound like it's an insult, because I think what Nolan does is he takes these very simple ideals and he builds these crazy worlds around them. And I think because the story itself is pretty simple and easily, you know, being easily able to connect to it and understand what's going on allows for all the other crazy shit to happen. Because if you have a really complex story that's not coherent and you do a movie like this, it's a very strong chance that it's a huge clusterfuck. And it's just a big, noisy, visually cool, but doesn't make any fucking sense kind of movie. But Nolan is a fucking master. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know his shit's gonna be good. My favorite things was the protagonist. What's his real name? John David Washington.
Yeah.
He was great in Black Klansman.
Yep.
And so I was excited to see him in this. He was also really good in like I bailed on Ballers a couple season in, but he was really good on that show Ballers too. So I was excited to see him in something. Robert Pattinson. I've never been a big fan of Robert Pattinson. He was cool in this one. And the other thing, this is weird, but what I'm most excited for out of this movie is knowing how Nolan likes to use the same people in different combinations, different type roles. Is I'm really excited to see John David Washington and Aaron Taylor Johnson in a movie together. Because I thought Aaron Taylor Johnson was really fucking good in this, and he didn't have a huge role, but I was like, oh, when he was on the screen, I was like, I like this guy. I want them to follow this guy a little bit more because he seems like he has a complete understanding of what's going on, and I know like as an audience, you're supposed to be with John David Washington in this a little bit, and you're kind of going on his ride, but like. And you find out later that Pattinson has more of a knowledge or more of a grasp on what's going on than he originally lets on. But it was like, this dude really knows what the fuck's going on. I kind of just want to follow him for a little bit, and then maybe that will kind of clear shit up. But yeah, overall, I liked it. And like I said, visuals, the sound, and even the performances were pretty great. Again, and nitpicking, dude, like, I didn't know this was a time travel movie going in, and I'm kind of just not into them. Like, there's so much shit that's up for debate, like, when you get into a serious time travel movie, and you get into all this, well, what about this, and what about that? And they even, like, address it in the movie, where, you know, like, well, what's he keep saying? What happens, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like the grandfather thing and everything. It's like, okay, you know what I mean? But it's also like you're playing in a world where you make the rules up as you go, and you kind of don't have to explain it. And I always found that kind of annoying. I want to see this movie one more time for sure. Just because now I know what's going on and I know what to look for. But it's weird in that, like, I don't have a desire to see it again afterwards. Like it's just like, hey, give me one more. Let me catch everything that I didn't catch, because now I know exactly what the movie is. And I know Nolan has put some shit in there that's like, you get really detailed. Like, again, thinking Pattinson is Max. And I kind of had that thought too, especially when he talks like... when this conversation at the end where the guy says, this looks like the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And he goes, well, it looks like the end of me. And it's like, fuck, dude, like now, like the actual like story part, the heart of it is like just getting started. And this is what I'm interested in seeing. You know what I mean? Like this is where I want the story to go. But yeah, it's really good. It's really fun. And I'm glad they kept, knowing, you know, what I think I know about Christopher Nolan, how he was steadfast of not releasing this outside of a theater, is very important for his movie. So I had a good time. I thought it was fun. It's, again, super nitpicky. It's not my favorite Nolan movie. Like, it's not even close to my favorite Nolan movie. And the second viewing might catch me a little bit better. You know, it might grow on me, but definitely worth a watch though, for sure.
What's your favorite Nolan movie?
Inception.
I mean, not a bad choice.
That's kind of a time travel movie as well.
Nah,
No.
Not really.
No. Not.
You don't travel through time in that movie.
Well, time manipulation, I suppose.
Not even that.
Time travel.
Nope.
Well,
you're going to memories and stuff. Like, I don't know. I mean, it is.
It's time manipulation because the deeper you get the dreams,
it's in the same city for sure.
It's what?
It's in the same neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I get that. But like I instantly, like, when I realized this was a time travel movie, I was like, damn, he just did Interstellar like one movie ago. I was like, that's weird. And then I was like, oh, he just did this thing where walking into a machine and out of a machine with the Prestige too. Like, I was like, that's weird that he's going back to the well on these two very important things. And I was like, if they go to space at some point, I'm out. But luckily enough, he like drew back from that a little bit.
I don't think space was
I
even an
like
option.
that with this movie and the technology, they didn't go into incredible detail in trying to explain, every little particle and physicist thing.
Oh,
of
you
this
can't.
technology. And the way they operated it as well, like you just said, it was literally you just ran into this giant metal cylinder, it turned, and you ran out, and you were inverted all of a sudden. It was actually pretty cool. And I mentioned this last night to Cody. I was like, I like too how the end battle, they're fighting for this MacGuffin crankshaft type thing.
Yeah.
And they're just like at the end, they split it up into when it ends up being two pieces, and they're just like, okay, we're just gonna spread this across the world, guys. And that's all you really need to know about the technology. You just need to know what it did. You kind of get an idea where it came from, but you didn't really need to know the nitpicky stuff in between of how it exactly worked. It didn't need to spin up, anything and create these lightning effects and stuff in order to just work.
And then David Bowie walks out of a box, and you're like, "What the fuck is David Bowie doing here?" No,
exactly.
I kept having this thought of like how Nolan thinks about what movie he wants to do next, and I kept like thinking like he just walked outside one time and like a car was driving down the road backwards. He's like, "Oh, that's weird," and then he's like, "Oh, wouldn't that be weird if like everything was backwards?" And he's like, "Hold on, I'm gonna write a movie real quick." And he's like,
real quick, and just the whole entire thing right there in an afternoon.
Yeah,
it mostly on napkins.
Yeah,
I imagine he's a paper towel guy, but that's just me.
Yeah,
maybe. One thing I forgot to mention, one of the things that I did like about this movie is how many times did it feel like it was just turning into a heist movie, where it was just like, all right, here we go, we're on a heist now, where we're just planning the heist, and it happens, and you're like, all right, cool, and then suddenly a few minutes later they're planning another heist, and it seems like a lot of movies would have just focused on that one heist, and it would just been that one thing, but here we are like 3 heists into this movie, and you don't even realize it's not even really a heist movie that we're in.
Yeah.
He made us sit through a version of Ocean's 11, 12, and 13 all in one movie, and they were all happening at the same time.
That's exactly what I was thinking while I was watching it.
But to your point about the MacGuffin and the technology and all that fun stuff, I liked the fact that in the movie itself, they even tell you like, we don't know how this works. It's from the future. Mm-hmm. The lady who made it dumb blowed her brains out. So
yeah, she did.
We just stuck with what she has. We can't recreate it. We can't do anything other than just have it. That's all we have. That is it. And that's their explanation of not knowing how it works or what it actually is. They're just like, we're stuck because this lady's like, oh, hey, I know history because of Manhattan Project and what they did with technology back then. I can see this going bad, kakunk, and just,
right.
But I think that was a cool element. Is like, that's a nice way of them having to be like, hey, we don't have to explain this if we don't know.
Just say we don't know.
You know what I mean? We're dumb primates from the past. We don't know how this future technology works, so we'll get away from it. You know what I mean? Like, don't have to worry about it. I thought that was a pretty clever way of doing it.
I mean, it's clever, but it's also a way of just avoiding it.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, there's but that's why I take issues sometimes with time travel movies, because it's like you either don't explain it at all or your explanation is bullshit, and it's like there's always like a little bit of like.
I think the problem too that you end up with if you try and explain it too hard is that in your explanation you're starting to set up rules on how time travel works, but inevitably you end up a lot of movies end up just violating their own rules, where here you don't really necessarily, you're not explaining how the technology works because you don't know how it works, and
the
so
only thing they said is
of the
time copy each other.
Yeah. Don't come into contact.
I really wanted to see that happen, by the way.
Yeah, that I was like, you set that up, and it's like,
you got to see what happens.
You're not gonna fucking show me that, like, like.
Well, I felt that's how the ending was too. Like you said, Mike, you get to the ending, and what does Battinson say at one point? This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship or whatever, beautiful relationship. There are many more adventures to come. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah.
It's just, it's
granted, that was
2.5
hours in, so you can't really.
Yeah.
Let's just keep going. I want to find out where this goes, or it went, or whatever. I don't know where we are. Let's just go. And I would love to see a sequel of this movie, but I don't think he'll do sequels.
No,
I don't think so.
Because he'll have to answer questions in a sequel, and he won't answer questions in this.
Or he shows how it got to where it ended and began, so you see a whole different adventure in that realm.
Just see it from a different.
Well, because like I was saying to Joe last night, is that opening scene at the Opera House or the Playhouse or whatever that thing is.
Yes.
We never see that come about. Everything else in the beat of the movie, you see where it comes from and how it goes there.
Right.
But never do you see the ending or the beginning at another point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because you realize that's Battinson because you see the keychain on his backpack that they kept showing. And well, because obviously the protagonist, which by the way, that's his character's name, if you didn't know that.
The
protagonist. He sees it, and the camera focuses on his point of view. Like, that's it, And it's funny because like he's slowly realizing things, but he hasn't realized it yet until that last conversation with Battinson when Battinson walks off with Kick-Ass, and he's like, "Oh, okay, I see."
Like you were that dude that saved me.
Yep.
Way back when, but still, why were you there?
Right.
Why?
Well, one of the reasons because he had to take that weird device thing.
Yeah, I guess he could be trying to get the device back then, but
that's what I'm saying. It's like we don't know, and we're never going to find out unless he does a sequel. It's not a sequel, but like a weird continuation, prequel, sequel thing. It's one of these again.
Yes, exactly.
It's all in there. 1,000 points of light.
Finger tie thing.
It's an old SNL joke right there. Hey, by the way, did you know who John David Washington is?
In terms of what?
He's Denzel Washington's kid.
Yeah, didn't know that. No,
he was a producer on Book of Eli.
Yeah, I had no idea who he was. Yeah. I also he's a football. He was a former football player. Why he was so good
because his character in Ballers, he played very well.
Yeah, he was believable as an athlete. But you could tell when Ballers came out that they're like, well, he's an actor, he's Denzel's kid, and he played football, so we can use him in this one. But he was actually like, I think when Ballers started rolling, people were like, oh, this guy's actually really good. like he's acting his ass off.
Right.
And he's in both Malcolm X and Devil in a Blue Dress.
Yeah. Malcolm X, I think he's credited as like kid in class or something like that.
Student in Harlem Classroom, and then in Devil in a Blue Dress, he's boy with toy rifle.
What's funny too is like he doesn't really look like Denzel, but he's very charismatic like him.
He got swag for show.
Like when he's being a ass in Tenet, that was my favorite parts of him. You know what I mean? When the guy asks him, "Have you slept with my wife?" He's all, "No, not yet." Like, oh shit, that's some Denzel shit right there. Like you can't.
So good.
Interesting. I did not know that. Anyhow, I guess if anyone else got anything else to bring up, we can wrap it up. We're a little shy of our hour, but that's okay.
He's actually gonna play Malcolm X, right? Isn't he?
Yeah, in upcoming movie that's getting 2 years or something on.
Malcolm and Marie.
Yeah,
that's crazy. That because Denzel
full
played
circle.
Yeah.
Yep. And Denzel, I mean, is probably the most, recognizable Malcolm X character on screen right now.
Nah, Mario Van Peebles.
Said no one ever.
Y'all don't like Ali?
I love Ali, but he's not the most recognizable Malcolm X character.
Yeah, when I think Malcolm X, I don't go, Mario Van Peebles.
Van Peebles.
Well, that's an issue with you, sir.
No, because then I go look at that weird cop werewolf movie he did and realize, oh yeah, no. And then in that weird Biker Boys movie, I'm like, oh no.
Oh yeah.
No.
You're just leaving out his good stuff like Heartbreak Ridge and Solo. You don't remember Solo?
Unfortunately, I do remember
movie
Solo.
was awful.
And you're a terrible human being for thinking that's a good movie.
Solo, Marvel Van Peebles' finest work.
On that note, that's it. We're
That
done.
movie
We're not
did
talking.
suck
No,
a
we're
lot
not
of
talking
ass.
A
anymore.
whole lot of ass.
Mike lost almost all of Taj's respect just now.
Listen, he never had it. It's all right.
Good.
Fair enough. Yeah. So that's it for this week's episode. Comes naturally. We are.
Joe.
Mike.
I'm Cody, and again, we were joined by.
Taj.
All right, as usual, you fuckers just came naturally.
Bitches.
I think Solo was a good movie.
Fuck off, Joe.